In Irwin, it's cloudy and 39. In Greenville, it's cloudy and 37.
Okay, I'm good.
In Johnson City, it's
okay.
And 37.
Now, hold on. We have not talked to this gentleman in some time, and we miss him greatly. His name is Jerry Bonkowski. He covers NASCAR for NBCSports.com. He's getting stronger every day. As I know that you've had you've been under the weather a little bit. But Jerry, it's great to talk to you here on Tri-City Sports Now, and it's time to get caught up with the off season of NASCAR. And I guess I wanted to do this really a few weeks ago because I know you wrote very eloquently on the passing of Bud Moore. And I really haven't had a chance much to talk about this, but I wanted to see if you could, let's start there, because that was sort of the first story after the first real big story after the NASCAR season ended. But just Bud Moore, tell us, for those of us who don't know who he was and all this, who was Bud Moore?
Well, he's one of the most prolific team owners, mechanics. He was a war hero, won, I think, was it 2 or 3 Purple Hearts, something like that. He just was, he was a man's man. He was one of the, earlier, he wasn't a pioneer because he was in the 60s and 70s, but he was very prolific in ownership. A lot of drivers drove for him, and he just was very well respected. Was inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame several years back. So he was the man when it came to NASCAR.
Well, I looked at that, and, you're talking about his war record. It's from Spartanburg, South Carolina. But do you see with Moore, I was sort of thinking how we've really gone away from the smaller race teams. I mean, this is a common thread in all this, to more of the super teams. But how do you think Bud Moore adapted to those changes in NASCAR over the years?
Well, he was part of the reason for some of the changes, though. So, he was always looked upon as one of the pioneers of the sport in terms of making changes and doing things differently, and not only improvising, but also just developing new systems and new equipment, things like that. So he was definitely a guy that a lot of his peers looked up to him for leadership. A lot of peers looked up to him for new initiatives and things like that too, as well.
Well, I know that he had a reaction. You talk about modern day, and past when. I know he had a relationship, worked with Fireball Roberts, which I guess I always, like hearing the stories about Fireball Roberts and such. But, it just goes back a ways, and I was saddened to hear, because, you do think about how NASCAR in the old days, I had on a few drivers from the 60s and all that, and it really was something. And these guys said, yeah, we slept in our cars because, we had to make sure we had enough money to run the race, and we didn't want to spend on a hotel room or something like that. And just how even in my own lifetime, this has all changed, yet someone like a Bud Moore was able to adapt to those changes and have just such a fascinating life that you wrote about so well on NBCSports.com. Jerry Bonkowski, since that time I know, and we talked a little bit about this, how Danica Patrick, and I had such high hopes for her when she joined the circuit, but she's only got 2 more races left to run: Daytona 500, the Indianapolis 500. This is a story basically from the end of the last silly season. But I don't know if I ever asked you, why do you think it has been that Danica Patrick struggled in NASCAR? Why do you think that she wasn't able to get that, pristine ride and really advance to the top, that she was more of an also-ran?
Well, she had a pristine company that she was driving for with Stuart Haas for several years. This has nothing to do with her being a female or anything like that. I know a lot of people, will say that it was, she couldn't handle it because she was female. That's bull as far as I'm concerned. The way I look at it,
of course,
Danica, like many drivers before her and many drivers that'll come afterwards, it was a difficult transition from open wheel racing in IndyCar, or some come over from Formula One, obviously, to transition over to NASCAR, and it's a whole different kind of sport. Series. It's a whole different kind of vehicle. There's so many. I mean, you're talking apples and oranges if you try to compare an Indy car with a stock car. I mean, the
Sure.
weight's different, the aerodynamics is totally different, all that kind of stuff. So, she did give.
Bless you.
Some of the still remnants I've had from the cough and the bronchitis, but to her credit, she gave it her all, and that's all you can ask for in this sport. I mean, not everyone is going to be a 7-time champion like Jimmy Johnson. Not everyone's going to win almost 50 races like Tony Stewart. Not everyone's going to be a Jeff Gordon or a Dale Earnhardt Jr. or anything like that. I mean, she gave it her all, and I give her a lot of credit for that. I mean, I thought for sure that she would win a race or two, and it just didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that she didn't have an impact in the sport. She had a tremendous impact in the sport, especially for female drivers. She certainly helped bring greater attention to programs like the Drive for Diversity, which was designed over a decade ago to bring in more females and more minority drivers. So she definitely made an impact, and I'm going to miss her. I mean, I was a little critical of her early on, but she a lot of criticism she got from a lot of people she didn't really deserve. I mean, she was up every Sunday or Saturday, busting her gut, trying to do well and trying to improve her performance or improve her skill, and it just didn't happen for her.
Yeah, I know you mentioned how she opened up some avenues for other drivers, minority drivers, and we have Bubba Wallace driving with Richard Petty Racing next season. And looking forward to that. But I know one guy, a very young driver, won the Xfinity title at age 19. And, it seems like NASCAR has been trying to get younger. A lot of the legends going by here later on. William Byron is, I guess, the maybe the next big thing that I'm hearing about. What can we expect out of William Byron next year?
That's a big question because, I mean, he's had such great success already in both the Camping World Truck Series and the Xfinity Series that, he could be a instant star or it could take him, he could have some struggles. I mean, a lot of times when guys, do very well in either the Xfinity or Truck Series, they struggle, initially when they get to the Cup Series. So, but I think Byron is just one of those unique individuals that he can do a lot, and he's done a lot in a very short period of time. He hasn't only been racing for, what's it been? It's been a very short period of time, maybe 6-7 years, I think it's been. So he's definitely a unique talent, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to what he's going to bring to the table at Hendrick Motorsports.
Well, and I'm going to go back to our original topic. I wanted to talk about Bud Moore, but you also just wrote, I guess it was 5 days ago, how Barry Dodson, who was the former crew chief of Rusty Wallace, we know a little bit about Rusty Wallace in East Tennessee. He's got a dealership just north of Knoxville. But Barry Dodson was also passed away during this offseason at 64. What was his relationship? What should we know about his contributions to Rusty Wallace's career?
Well, of Rusty's 55 wins, Barry was the crew chief for 18 of them. In fact, Barry won 19 races as a crew chief, 18 were with Rusty, and then one was with Kyle Petty. So, he was a very much a strategist. He was very much a tactical guy, very much hands-on. In fact, I actually found this surprising. I never knew this about Barry, that, when he was Rusty's crew chief, and even before that, when he was crew chief for Tim Richmond and a few other guys, he actually went over the wall, too, and he was a jackman. I mean, that's, how, to try to say that today, to see a crew chief become a jackman, as well, that just doesn't happen anymore. So, he did a lot of, good things. Very close friend with Rusty. I know I got a chance to talk to Rusty the day after Barry died, and he was really broken up about it. This was a very close friend with his, and it was a relationship that wasn't just on the racetrack; it was off the racetrack as well, too.
Well, I know you've actually been writing a lot about Rusty Wallace, as a matter of fact. I wanted to segue to this. And there's a story that you had on last week, catching up with Rusty Wallace from the Blue Deuce days to today. A lot of people know about his car dealership, like I said, about 100 miles south of us. But what is Rusty Wallace doing these days in his post-driving career?
So he actually has 7 car dealerships, and one's right down the street from you. In fact,
Yeah.
Several are down the street from you, out in Bristol in that area, or Johnson, or not Johnson City, but in Bristol in that area. So he's very very much a major player in the auto industry in your neck of the woods. But Rusty is
Yeah, I know that, and sometimes, I mean, my day in preparing for this show, it's just going to be in the morning, all about this show and all that. When you don't have that primary focus, you can dabble in a lot of different things, as you mentioned. And so it was good to see you write a little bit about Rusty Wallace, and of course, sad to hear about his crew chief passing. Also, just some stuff that you've been talking about. I guess this shows a little bit about the growth of the sport, but Martin Truex Jr. named the New Jersey Sports Person of the Year. Boy, you would have thought a New Jersey Sports Person of the Year. I mean, that's got to be a football player or a basketball player or something like that. But no, it's a NASCAR driver. Can you tell us? I know you wrote about it, but what did the honor mean to Martin Truex Jr.?
Well, it was very much a big thing for him because he's a Jersey boy, and I don't want to be too flippant about it, but if you think about it from a sports perspective, it kind of puts him in the same kind of neighborhood, if you will, from a musical perspective with a guy like Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen. And he's kind of like the Bon Jovi or Bruce Springsteen of NASCAR drivers, and that's a pretty heady thing for people from New Jersey. So, and you remember, Mayetta, New Jersey, his hometown, is a very, very small town. I think it's got one track light or something like that, and it's ridiculously small. But he's definitely made his home state proud, and they're very much looking forward to him continuing on his career and seeing what he can do next year, and maybe get another championship and a whole lot more wins as well too.
Yeah, you don't think of a lot of one stoplight towns in New Jersey. That just and yet I'll tell you, I mean, I've driven through there, and believe it or not, I mean, I can tell you that in the I guess the western part of the state. There isn't a whole big part of the western, but the northwestern part of the state, yes, you can find that convenience store with the NASCAR posters up and the chewing tobacco ads and the log cabin motif. You can actually find that at some of the gas stations and stores in New Jersey. You won't find a lot of them, but you can. And then as an added bonus, they'll actually pump your gas for you, too. It's a law there that they have to. Anyway, hey, let's see. What else have I met? What else are the biggest stories of the offseason, in your opinion, Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, this is a very unique period of time right now because we just finished Christmas yesterday, and it's kind of like their last hurrah for the time off for most teams because come January 2, the whole brand new season starts. I mean, sure, we don't beat. I mean, what is it? It's only 40. I want to say 40 days, or maybe about 40 days to start Speed Weeks. So we got a lot of ground to cover in a very short period of time. I mean, teams have to start not only preparing for Daytona. I mean, I'm sure they already have, but you've got to start preparing your Atlanta car, your West Coast. 3 races on the West Coast. You got that West Coast swing you got to deal with. Phoenix, Vegas, and Fontana. So I mean, when teams come back from this little break here, they've got essentially 6 or 7 races they have to prepare for. In only a matter of a few weeks to get ready for all that stuff. So I mean, it's not just a matter of going to Daytona; it's a matter of a whole brand new season. You got to be ready for that season because there's no adage in NASCAR how you do in the first 5 races is a pretty good indicator of how you're going to do for the rest of the season. So those first 5, 6, 7 races are going to be very, very important. That's why the teams have already started preparing for them. There really is no off season in NASCAR. Maybe there might be a week or 2 off, but that's about it. As far as teams preparing for the following year, then.
Well, Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com, we mentioned a little bit about new drivers coming in or, new teams. I know you wrote earlier this month about Rick Ware Racing and that they have a NASCAR Cup charter and all. But what should I know about Rick Ware Racing? Does this team have a chance to be a player anytime soon on the Monster Energy Series? Or what should I know about them?
Well, with the new charter that they've leased, they haven't announced who they've leased it from, but I have a pretty good idea where it's coming from. They're taking their next step. I mean, Rick Ware, hard to say that 3 times. Rick Ware Racing, they're a small team. They're out of Thomasville, I think, North Carolina, which is where the Blaney's are from. And he, Rick has been in this sport for a long, long time. I was kind of surprised to see that he's been racing 27 years. I mean, most of it's been part-time teams and stuff like that. But now that they've got the charter, they're going to go in it full bore. They're going to go they got some better sponsorship, they're bigger sponsorship, additional sponsorships, probably a better way to say it. And they're looking to make some noise in 2018. I mean, it's been a slow progression for them, but I think that they're at a point now where they're going to go full-time racing in the Cup Series, and they've had a number of drivers that have raced for them, in short periods of time or periodic periods of time, and I think that once they make them the announcement who their driver's going to be, it's going to be full steam ahead. And I think that a few good things here, a little bit more sponsorship there, they could very easily become a team that will make some noise, and people will find out who Rick Ware Racing really is.
I just took that when I was listening. You said that the Blaneys are from North Carolina. Now, I remember Dave Blaney saying Sharon, PA, his brother played for West Virginia. I even remember being an auto parts delivery driver and dealing it to a mechanic outside of Pittsburgh who did work on the early Blaney race cars. They've moved to North Carolina now, hey?
Well, actually, yeah, but here's the thing. They started in Ohio, then they had they went east side of Ohio near Pennsylvania. Then they moved down to Thomasville. That's where Dave and Ryan was raised in the Thomasville area. So, their roots are originally in Ohio, but, they've been in North Carolina now for the last, who knows how many years it's been.
Well, I got Casey Getz, who is from the mechanic that I know. I cannot remember for the life of me his name, but Casey Getz is a local television anchor for Channel 5 around here, and he is from the town, like I said, that I remember one day just stopping by at a Texaco station and somehow talking NASCAR, and the mechanic there said, "Oh yeah, I used to work on Dave Blaney's dad's cars. Yeah, I used to work at I know the family real well." They're like, it's just a fun conversation to have out there and such. Oh, by the way, we earlier in this conversation, we talked about more of a diverse driver field and such. I saw Danville, Virginia, known for minor league baseball, but you wrote about this, is actually putting a home to Wendell Scott, NASCAR Hall of Famer, on all the major roadways coming into the city and all that. Is that going to happen, or tell us what's going on there?
Well, the last I heard a couple of days ago, just before the Christmas break, the city council met last Tuesday, and in so doing, they, instead of just, to me, that's a slam dunk. Wendell Scott is your hometown hero, your hometown boy. You should definitely honor him. And like a lot of politicians do, they decided they were going to form a committee to study the thing. When the Wendell Scott Foundation brought I think they had over 700, 800 petition signatures. This should have been something that should have been done a long time ago. And now they're going to meet, I think, the first week of January or so to decide whether they can, do these signs or build these signs or put them up. There's already a street that was named for Wendell Scott's honor several years ago in the city. And this is, to me, is just a slam dunk. It should have been done already. And hopefully that this new committee that they formed will say, yes, let's get this done as soon as possible. Because the longer you delay, to me, it's not a good thing to Wendell Scott's honor when you have something that you can do readily and you have to, put it through channels or whatever. It should have been done a long time ago, in my opinion.
That's one of the things. I don't like, the committee hearings. I don't like heck, it sounds a lot like here in Johnson City. It's been taking forever and a day to figure out what street to name after Martin Luther King. Is this really something that, we shouldn't be doing, and all this. And so you hate to hear that getting caught up in red tape. Sure, I'd love to see, excuse me, the signs. And I can also understand that, maybe Danville, Virginia wants to be known for more than just, a prominent African-American race car driver, be it the minor league baseball team or what have you in Danville and such. But yeah, at least some of the signs honoring him, that would be great, because he is a big part, I think, of NASCAR history, as well as certainly Danville, Virginia history. So I look forward to that. What else have I missed? What else should NASCAR fans be looking out for here in the off season?
Well, I think, a couple of the driver changes. Specifically Ryan Blaney going over to Team Penske. He'll be the number 12 car this year. I think that's going to be a big thing for people to watch. Paul Menard leads Richard Childress Racing and is now with the Wood Brothers. I think I'm actually working on a story on Greg Irwin, his new crew chief, who used to be Greg Biffle's crew chief back in 2009. story that we didn't even talk about is Richard Childress was home in his home in North Carolina last Sunday, and 3 masked invaders, home invaders, tried to break through his house with Richard and his wife there. Richard grabbed his gun, and remember, Richard's the first vice president of the National Rifle Association. grabbed his gun and shot at the guys. Apparently, he didn't hit him, but certainly probably put a big scare into them. So, I mean, to me, anybody that would try to deal with or try to tangle with Richard Childress is a total fool.
I read about that, and now that you mention it with the NRA, I hadn't made the connection. I got to be plead ignorance there. Maybe that's a big time ignorance, but it reminds me of when some people in Indianapolis tried to rob a gun store. Didn't work out well for them.
No,
Anyway, I just, and all this, and I'm glad actually no one was killed. I'm glad that the fear of God and they run away and that sort of thing happens. I mean, that I think is a good story and all that. But I do remember reading that about Richard Childress and saying, "All right, defending your own home." I'm glad to hear that. I'm really, I am glad that nobody got hurt. I remember one talk show host once talking about, "I love to hear it when criminals are shot dead like that." And I don't like criminals, but really, I mean, I just feel a little bit funny, saying I'm glad that somebody got killed. I'm glad the crime wasn't perpetrated. Everybody is safe. And maybe the bandits will think twice and live a legitimate life now. That's what I'm glad about, Jerry. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing, too. I mean, apparently Richard did not hit them as far as what the reports we've heard. But Richard initially posted a $10,000 reward, and a bunch of his partners, sponsors, friends, they came together, and now the reward is $50,000. So, when money comes like that, it's money talks, and somebody knows what's going on and who these 3 guys are. So I think it's just a matter of time before you see some arrests and eventually convictions on these guys.
I'm reminded of Clay Higgins, the Cajun John Wayne. I don't know if you know her. He's now a Louisiana politician, I believe, but he would do these spots for Crime Stoppers and all this, and it'd say, "Hey, you that just robbed this store, there's $1,000 riding on your head, and now that you're on TV, all your friends are going to turn you in because they don't really like you, and they'd rather have the cash." I'm just throwing that out, and you're just watching this, and, it's just beautiful and such. Jerry Bonkowski is also beautiful, and it's beautiful that he covers NASCAR racing, and I love the beautiful interviews that we do, and I'm not going to wait until Daytona to talk to you again. Jerry Bonkowski on Tri-City Sports Now. How is that for a let go?
Outstanding.
You like that one right there? But yeah, I do remember it was Neil